I'm going to just start painting here with, I want to get that real vivid color in the center, so I'm not going to do a full cover of the canvas like I sometimes do with like a wash. I really want to get that pink in there. So I'm going to just start by getting some of that. I've got some of that quinacridone red, and I'm going to use a little bit of that just to sort of shape that rose. I want to get a bit of the petals in there, so I'm going to leave a little room. Just sort of marking out where that's going, and I'm going to add to the petals on the kind of the outer edge there, I'm going to add a little bit of this transparent yellow oxide to the mix, because I see kind of as the rose goes along, there's a little bit of a yellow color to the petal, so I'm just going to get that in there. So at this point, I'm just sort of blocking in the shapes that I see, kind of looking at the angles. And just sort of roughing it in, you know, first to begin with. And once I kind of know where everything's going, then I can sort of mark out the backdrop, the background color a bit. But I really want to get a clean base for this nice pink peachy rose. All right, and okay, so once you get that in there, you know, I'm going to kind of put in where there's some green, just to have just a little bit of that in the backdrop, and you'll see in the reference photo, you'll see a bit of the green leaves. I'm using a little sap here and some of this transparent, or I think that's some burnt sienna that I had out. And I'm not using any medium, except for I've added a little bit of the quick dry. I'm using the water mixable oil, and I'm using a little quick dry medium. It helps the paint move along, and it also helps it kind of speed up the drying time, which if you've used water mixable oil, you'll know it kind of, at least I'm in Arizona, and it still seems to take quite a bit of time to dry. So I'm just gonna put that stem in there. And I'm gonna get a little bit of that. I've got out some really pretty quinacridone violet. I'm just gonna put a little bit of that in the center there. It's a real interesting rose because it has a real dark center, and then it moves to real light. So I'm just going to clean that brush off, and just going to use this Viva paper towel, and this really gives it a nice wipe away because it's smooth. So I'm just going to go and kind of wipe away some of the edges there, just to kind of mark out where I'm going to have those highlights. So each time I kind of refold my paper towel so that I get that that nice clean edge. And this one comes up here. And then you can use your paper towel to kind of mark off where some of those real fine lines are in the center. You can just kind of bend your paper towel a bit to make a point, and just really grabs some of that color, and it also kind of blends it a little. So I just kind of fold and, you know, make a firm edge there, and then I'm looking at that reference photo and pulling away some of that color. Sometimes you get a brighter, you know, edge when you wipe away. You don't even want to paint over it because it's so pretty, and it also just sometimes glows brighter than if you try to get that with an original brush stroke. And sometimes you can use like one of these brushes that have the pointy edge and put in some of those thin lines that you see in the rose. This is also another way of creating that. Those marks that you see, those really beautiful kind of glowing edges. So I got enough going on there. I'm just going to get a little bit of a dark shadow going around the rose. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of this. I've got some cobalt out here and a little bit of that transparent red oxide. And I want to get in there and really kind of get that dark side of the rose in there so that it'll kind of show off the highlights more. Whoops. So I kind of pay attention to the reference as I work my way around there. And then the paper towel kind of gets lighter. And then there's a bit more of a shadow over here by the leaves. Just warm that up a little with some yellow oxide just to, so it's not pure white, but I want to get that light coming across there. this, or mix up another kind of bit of bluey gray. Can add more transparent red oxide to that just to gray it down a little. Just trying to get that background in there. Well, it's kind of, that's the part I wanted to get done so that I could really show off the rose. And now I can kind of go back to the rose. I have to get that background in there as quick as I could, you know, so you don't. So now we can just focus on the rose and getting those highlights on there. So I think I want to make sure my brush is really clean. And then I can go in and start adding some detail to the rose. So I want to mix up something that's kind of light and kind of peachy. So I'll add a little bit of this cad yellow deep and some quinacridone to the, and maybe a bit of this yellow to make that kind of yellowy, you know, color that's on the tips of the rose there. Just get a little bit of a highlight there. And I want to make sure, you know, I keep my brush clean. So I'm just going to add a bit of that there. Don't want to get too much of it going because I don't want the green to, you know, get it too mucky. So the same with this edge here. I want to really kind of pull that color out to the edge and then make sure you wipe your brush so you don't get the background color, you know, mucking up your highlight there. And get a little more of that quinacridone red and get a really nice pink going for these. There's a real bright highlight kind of right about here where I wiped away earlier. And that kind of follows that line a bit. And back to this more yellowy, pink, peachy color here. I'm going to carefully kind of put that to the edge and don't want to muck up that color too much. So I'm just going to put a blob of paint down and then I'll kind of shape it. And then in the shadow here, I'm going to mix a little quinacridone red into that original mixture of the yellow oxide and quinacridone red, that transparent yellow oxide, and sort of get, this is more in the shadow over here, so I want to and so you just kind of are kind of looking through the reference at where that light is coming down, and then I'm gonna, this is in the shade, this part here, so I'm gonna kind of just use a little more white, but I'm not gonna make it bright. And then you can always blend, so use a dry brush and sort of use that color that's in there still wet and sort of blend it a little. Get more of that pinky yellow color. And then you can dry your brush off and sort of blend that edge. And I want to get some of that transparent yellow oxide and just a little more of that shadow, kind of warm color, maybe a little bit of that transparent red oxide, and get in a little more depth in there. And then there's sort of a dark edge in the shadow of this one. And then there's some real glowing quinacridone red under, there's this lip here, and I'm going to get some of that real bright glowy pink quinacridone red in there. And then I'm going to grab some of that light pink and get some of that, kind of wraps around. And then it has a real bright yellow edge, bright yellowy white glowing edge there. So I'll just kind of just dab that edge a little bit with that light yellow mix. And we got to get that transparent yellow and get that kind of right between the glowing and the light, real light edge is that sort of dark yellowy greeny color, and I just want to get that in there so that it really makes that the edge pop, and also there's going to be that glowing pink in there. Same with, there's just a little bit of that right there on the edge between the light and the warm light shining through the rose petal. And there's a real dark shadow in here. And what I love about using that in the shadow, that transparent yellow oxide, is it doesn't ruin the color so much. It just sort of blends in as a nice, deep, you know, warm shadow. I added a little bit of that quinacridone violet into this transparent yellow oxide mix just to kind of glaze in a more shadow color. And there's a lot more of that kind of violet purpley color in the shadow there. Sort of blending that in a bit. And you notice I'm really kind of taking those edges off there. And now I'm going to go and add a little more quinacridone red and that cad yellow deep and get some more light pink on those edges there. As the rose goes away from the center, it gets a lot of those, gets more yellow, but in the center there's a lot of pink and violet. You don't want to change the color on that outside. So you got to go mix up some more kind of that peachy yellow color there. And then there's the other side of the rose there, catching the light, has a real yellow look to it. And the center is very pink. You don't want to do too, I don't want to start mucking up the center too much so that I make a mess, you know. But there's this kind of one little, some little petals that kind of start to, you know, come down here that are really pretty. Could switch to a smaller brush, and that might help too. But you just sort of, you know, you kind of look at your reference and you kind of just have to build up and pay attention to the different tones and the different colors and values. And I've been, you know, for example, I've been working a lot on the kind of the more mid-tone around there, but I can squint down and really look at, you know, the rose and see that there's some darker values I need to go in and add. That would help. So I'll go maybe get this, you know, I could get a little round brush like this to work in some of those glowing kind of reds. And for example, there's a real glowing area right up here. I sound funny. I'm talking about this one area where the light's coming through, and it kind of comes through here. So I'm just going to use this little brush and just add a bit of that in there. And kind of over here. But it's not, there's really no hyper realistic, you know, stuff going on. This is real just impressionistic painting. There's a little highlight on that one edge there. But that's kind of my fancy rose that I got I bought these roses actually for my daughter's birthday, and I stole one away to paint this picture because I thought it's just really pretty, really beautiful roses that I got from the grocery store. And just thought it would be nice to share this painting with you. And so there you go. You can loosen up some of the edges with one of these any kind of fuzzy brush you got around the studio. You know, just you can take some of the edges off a little bit here and there, just so it's not so stiff. All right, well, there you have it.